Good evening, everyone. We will now begin the subcommittee meeting on conference to be held Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. This meeting will take place in the Chelsea City Council chambers. The following matter will be discussed. Discuss the home rule petition regarding that notwithstanding the maximum number of license authorized to be granted under Chapter 17 of Chapter 138 of the General Laws, the licensing authority of the City of Chelsea may grant the five additional full licenses for sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises under Section 12 of said Chapter 138, provided only to establishments that meet the city's definition of hotels, restaurants, and function halls, provided that in the case of function halls only, the seating capacity is more than 100 persons. B, a license granted under this section shall not be transferable to any other person, corporation, organization, and shall not be deemed a Chelsea license, and shall be deemed a Chelsea license. A transfer in violation of subsection A or B shall render the license null and void. If a license granted under this section is canceled, revoked, or no longer in use at the location of the original issuance, it shall be returned physically with all the legal rights and privileges pertaining thereto to the local licensing authority, which may then grant the license to a new application. Copy of the home rule petition can be found at the Chelsea City Council office, 500 Broadway, room 306, Chelsea, Mass., or you may email fmalera@chelseama.gov. Officials invited to attend the subcommittee meeting, all honorable members of the Chelsea City Council, the City Manager Tom Ambrosino, City Solicitor Cheryl Watson Fisher, and all members of the public. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to take a roll.
Councilor Recupero? Councilor Teneri Garcia? Councilor Robertson?
Here.
Councilor Taylor?
Here.
Councilor Lopez?
Here.
Councilor Vega Maldonado? Councilor Avellaneda?
Here.
Councilor Brown? Councilor Vido?
Present.
Councilor De Jesus?
Here.
And Councilor Judith Garcia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. In addition to a copy of the meeting order and also the home rule petition, you should have in front of you the City of Chelsea Licensing Board request for proposals, on-premise consumption license. Unfortunately, our city solicitor, who was working with the licensing board and proposed these together and worked on this draft, was not feeling well and cannot make it, but I wanted to allow you all to take a look at what the licensing board is considering to do as an RFP, a request for proposals for these new licenses, which is have a better sense of giving these licenses not on a first come, first serve. And I don't mean the five that are in the home rule petition. What I mean is the new five that were just assigned to the City of Chelsea after this 2020 census. As many of you know, due to the increase in our population, the ABCC deemed that Chelsea had the availability of 5 new liquor licenses, and those are the 5 that the license board are considering to have fall under these new guidelines, and instead of going through a first come, first serve, which has been past way of doing of handing out licenses. I'll read some of the things that they proposed here so that those is entered into the record and also for those watching at home. The proposals for applications for these 5 licenses would ask that they include in their proposal the location, providing the address, the building square footage, available parking, lease agreements, options to purchase, and any other information and documentation about the location of the existing or proposed restaurant or operation of a hotel and such. A description of the operation. Provide a detailed description of the type of restaurant proposed or existing, including type of food, theme, menu, number of seats, hours in operation. Number 3, prior experience. Provide a detailed description of the proposal's prior experience in operating a restaurant with a liquor license. List the name and location of any ownership interest in any existing or former restaurant. Number 4, include job creation. Please list the types of positions and a number of each position that will be created or maintained. 5, traffic. Provide the peak hours of operation and expected traffic generation of the said petitioned operation. Number 6, noise control. Describe any proposed entertainment and how the noise, particularly in the evening, will be controlled. References. Please provide, they will ask that they provide any applicant 3 professional references, preferably from those who can attest to the proposal's experience set forth in paragraph or number 3. Community benefit. Please provide any description of any community benefit the city may expect if the licensee is granted to the proposer. Quality design. Describe how the business exterior design is appropriate to its context. Number 10, market diversification. Demonstrate how the proposed restaurant fills an existing gap and meets unmet market demand, and how it advances Chelsea's objective of being the diverse dining destination. All applicants will then submit their application to the ABCC. I also included, for my colleagues to take a look at, a similar effort that is being pushed in City of Boston by our colleagues, by the Boston City Councilors, that not only are they expanding or pushing for an increase in the number of more liquor licenses, which we are not, we already have the 5, but they're talking about reserving them for certain parts of the communities that are being underserved, and with some ideas that because of the high cost of a license in the city of Boston, running into up to the 600,000s, that some pockets of Boston, particularly those with high minority majority, don't have the ability to put this investment. Working with Cheryl, our city solicitor, and the license board, I suggest that I introduce this home rule petition in essence to do the following. These 5 licenses, these new licenses, if the state legislature approves our home rule petition, these licenses would be reserved and be actually controlled by the city. And by doing so, when someone petitions for one of these 5 licenses and they abide by this application process and give a detailed report of or petition of what they're going to do, if the board then hands that over to them, there's no transfer cost. So an up-and-coming or a economically disadvantaged individual or group that is looking to open up a restaurant here in the city of Chelsea has an opportunity without that economic barrier. And if that business then sells or closes, that license reverts back to the city, and then the city is able to again hand it out to a similar petitioner in the future. Currently, the existing licenses, should a restaurant close or want to sell its operation, that license in itself is a valuable commodity and is being transferred in costs. Anywhere right now, we're looking at $100,000 to $150,000 and higher, simply to purchase a license to serve beer, wine, or a full liquor license for a restaurant. This does not, the 5 does not have anything to do with liquor stores at all, so that would not be the case. It's simply for restaurants or possible function hall or a hotel. Yes, I was just about to say, so that's basically the essence of it all. And at this time, if anyone has any questions to myself about this or to the city manager, unfortunately, again, the city solicitor was not available, but those were the thoughts. And so if you have any questions, feel free. So.
When we say function hall, provided that that it has a seating capacity of more than 100 persons, besides Emiliana's, which I'm not sure what's going on there, are there any other function halls that have that much seating capacity?
There are probably some buildings in the city of Chelsea that may be converted to one. For example, the Tibetan Hall used to be the Irish Club. That possibly has enough size.
Okay.
Should they ever want to petition for to be a function hall, that would be one that could be the size of
Okay.
it. So that's one. I can't think of any buildings right now that could possibly be it, but the PPC, well, they're a club, but they have a license already. So the PPC already has one. But right now, no, I can't think of
Okay.
any other options, but. Any other questions?
Not
before-
yet. I'm-
Counselor Taylor.
Okay, so my question has to do with what happens when somebody sells their business to someone else and they keep that same corporation, or they just buy the corporation or whatever, but it's still a transfer to someone else, right? Or does that count as, because the way it reads is kind of ambiguous. You know, a license granted under this section shall not be transferable to any other person, corporation, organization, or shall be deemed a Chelsea license. So if they couldn't come in and have their own corporation. They'd have to buy the existing corporation in order for this to keep the same license?
Right now, for example, it happened with the Winter Lounge. Winter Lounge opened up, they had a liquor license, and then they sold everything, restaurant, and separately, as an asset, the liquor license. In this case, the purchase price would simply be for the restaurant itself and not the liquor license. The owner doesn't, but they would still have to petition to the licensing board and ask for the transfer, which currently happens anyway. If I want to buy Floramos, and the Floramo family would have to transfer me the restaurant, and I would say, okay, here's $1 million for the restaurant, $500,000 for the liquor license, 1.5 purchase price. I still have to go to the licensing board for the approval of the transfer of the liquor license. As it stands now, that would still apply here for this one. And it would be a conditional sale. If Damali opens a restaurant and I want to buy it from her and she got one of these licenses, the purchase would be conditional on the licensing board transferring me that same license regardless.
But if it's the same, then what?
Well,
know.
the idea is that
Other than you couldn't sell it to another person.
well, she
you'd
could
have-
sell the restaurant to me, but at the
No,
same time,
I
yeah.
mean the license.
Right, you couldn't sell it.
So that's really the only difference.
The only difference, but in essence, the idea is that when Damali petitions, she's actually saying, hey, look, I'm going to offer something that no one else is offering right now. And idea of me buying it is I'm going to continue to offer what she's currently doing. So that would be the difference therein. The license essentially belongs to the city. And again, hopefully, again, if for example, Damali went in there and said, this is a opportunity for a Latina woman to open up and have an opportunity here, hopefully she sells it to another Latina woman and it keeps going, who knows, or another minority, but those are the things. Wait, let Councilor Taylor finish.
So I have a follow-up question then. If that's true then, and you're going to have kind of a two-tiered licensing system, how is that going to affect the value of the current licenses? I mean, someone coming in will just say, well, you know what, I'm not going to want to spend the money to buy somebody else's license. I'm just going to apply for one from the city and pay a lot, or open my own thing for a lot cheaper. So I mean,
But you're gonna
what
have
we're
to-
essentially doing.
You'll have to prove that what you're offering, what you're doing.
No, I
is
understand that, and I mean, I get the value for the city and all that. That's not what I think I'm basically for this concept, but I want to make sure that people with current licenses don't get screwed in the process, and that the value of those, which they might have paid for, now goes down because there are these other licenses that other people, that prospective buyers of their business may not want to spend the money now and just try to go through the other process, at least first to try it. without coming, so to me, it kind of, I guess I'm torn because this in a way I think impedes, people buying and selling their business. And when somebody has spent a long time building up their business and that's their nest egg, and then they want to sell it, I just want to make sure that they're not going to get screwed in the process because we decided that we were going to have, basically free licenses or nominally priced licenses as opposed to having to purchase one from someone else, an existing business. So I mean, I think that we need to consider that, and I don't know what the solution is. I'm not even sure how much the prices of these new licenses are going to be. Do we have an answer to that?
Goose egg. These new
Zero,
licenses-
for
zero,
free.
For
Okay.
free.
So,
But again, once you have these licenses, other costs that are associated, basically you have to still pay.
so I
a
like
real-
the
a
idea
renewal.
about entrepreneurs
Right.
having that, but I just think for existing businesses, it's going to be hard having that two-tiered system.
And I understand where you're coming, the economic side of it and the potential harm. I would say, I think there's gonna be zero harm to the existing values of the restaurants or licenses, and I'll give you the example and why. Because there's still a sense of freedom of who and how and the value they can sell it for. You have no value on this other one. So, you're getting for free, but you also aren't gonna make any money later on. I would say it's very similar to affordable home ownership opportunities. You can go into a building, and there can be market rate units in the building, and there can be affordable rate unit buildings. If I buy a market rate and I pay $300,000 today, there's an idea that in 10 years, that's gonna be worth much more, and I'm going to get that benefit. If I buy the affordable, I am buying at a much lower rate because I'm income qualified. And when I sell it, I still have to sell it at the same value that originally was sold. And so there's no benefit. I have to sell it to a person who's also income qualified. So there's the similarity, and it doesn't hurt the value of the other properties at all because they still appreciate, because there's no deed restrictions, there's no restrictions at all. Similar here, there's no restrictions on me buying a liquor license from
But there's no
Winnesimmet Lounge.
restrictions on somebody who could afford a full license to come to the city and get one for free.
Well, again,
That's the difference in the analogy,
I think
you
the
know.
idea is that when they do their vetting process, they're gonna be looking at also assets, potentially the license board. I don't wanna speak for the licensing board, but
So that's a
potential-
whole different thing.
Well, potentially, they could say, hey,
gets in-
you
I
can.
mean, then I'd be against it, if
you
that's
can-
the
if-
case.
If you can afford it, then if you're a hotel,
Okay.
if you are a hotel,
Is that gonna be?
I don't know,
Can I
again,
ask the city manager?
you
through
can
the
talk
chair
to the city
here?
manager, but that's my interpretation. I would think that,
So now we're getting into the affordable business?
well, that was the whole point. I think the whole point of it is saying to provide these 5 licenses to individuals who maybe do not have the economic ability to open.
Okay, but the problem is, like, there's a difference between, say, affordable housing and affordable business, because the number one reason why any business fails is undercapitalization. They don't have enough money. So this kind of sounds like then you're kind of, enabling people who can't really afford to open a business or don't. And, everybody thinks that they do, but then they don't, especially in the restaurant business. Take my word for it. I mean, that's generally my business. So I'm worried about this because, it can also be trying to set people up to fail. And if people aren't successful, that's not good for the city.
But
So, I mean,
at the same
really
time,
creating,
yeah.
really creating a lot of economic opportunity and a lot of success, right, in business is not only good for the person, it's good for the city because they're bringing in more tax revenue. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, this may be very well-intentioned, but I'm a little skeptical about what the end result's gonna be. Because this is the #1 problem with every single business, and it's by far the #1 reason why every business fails, because they don't have enough money.
Mr. President?
I will have confidence if you read again the RFP by the licensing board. If you see, I have confidence in the license board members that when they evaluate the petitioners and the applicants, that in there, part of the vetting will be, they have to show that they have assets significant to make a good run of it. They have to have shown experience, that they have done this sort of restaurant before, the management, and they have to show that they have a lease in place, all of it. So there is some things in there. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to give this 5 liquor licenses to, say, someone who's opening up a franchise. Because A, it's something that's already here, and they themselves say, hey, you know what? If the franchise who, when you want to open up a franchise, you know, they look at you and say, how much assets do you have? We want to make sure that you're not going to go under. To open up a Dunkin' Donuts, you have to have $2 million worth of assets.
Right.
All right?
At
So,
least.
okay, so, because they don't want to fill, because it's on them. So that same litmus test being held and say, well, if you have those sort of assets, you don't really need to buy one of these or give one of these for zero. You know, buy one from the ones that are existing. And you somehow say, well, that's unfair. But, well, the idea is to give these to people who don't have that $2 million in assets and need a way to get in and create some wealth around here. Councilor Robinson, then Councilor Recupero, and I apologize if I've missed this side, if anyone has any questions or anything.
Councilor Vidal also has another one.
Okay.
Well, I think we have to look at it. We initially gave a liquor license at X amount of dollars on a shot end. And businesses have been able to monopolize that liquor license and make a lot of money. And the city got nothing in return. So a liquor license was just sold for $650,000. So people like us could not get in the game because we couldn't afford to spend $650,000 just to buy a liquor license and then try to open up a business and go. I mean, I felt I could only support these licenses if they referred it back to the city.
And that's what they'll do.
Right, so it would give people an opportunity who wanted to have a chance to start a business, to go forward in that manner. You know, those who have benefited in the past by purchasing a liquor license back when it was $3,500 and were able to sell them for $200,000 on top of what they get for their business. I think that was a mechanism that hurt the community, being that, you know, you needed a lot of money to be able to get in the game to purchase a liquor license.
Councilor Recupero? Please speak into the mic.
Your mic is over here.
From what I understand, what this is trying to do is more or less what we had a meeting, I don't know, a year ago or something, to make a plain equal field. So if you own your license, you ain't gonna make money off of it. You're just gonna try, before people will sell the business and the license will go, it was like a cab business. When they sold the medallions, they will go and make all kinds of money. This will equal out the playing field more or less for people. So if you own your business and you transfer it over, your license might go with it. Is that what you're saying? You can purchase it and from the city, and it will go with it without an additional cost.
These are only for the 5 new licenses.
Well-
The 30 existing licenses,
Nothing you can do about
nothing
that.
changes. They are of value. They can appreciate, and you can transfer them, sell them, however you want.
So in other
These 5, once they're issued, when the business closes down, it comes back to the city.
That's what we discussed before, and that's a good thing. So it gives that playing field equal to other people, instead of you making money off your license. I can understand Mr. Taylor's concern, but I understand that, okay, you got it for $1,000, let's say, don't sell it for $1 million. more or less what you're trying to do now. Okay, the existing license. So here's a question I ask. When these business get rid of their licenses, do the original license go back to the cities? And they can't sell them anymore. That's the whole point, right? So they would have to go and start new businesses. And now these businesses, when they apply, we're gonna put a big fee, or it's gonna be free?
There'll be a regular fee. I'm sure there's a fee, an annual renewal license, and that remains the same. But every business, when you renew your license, pays the same amount. What is different here is I didn't have to buy it for somebody else.
So what if somebody, like he said, all right, what if somebody wants to open up a business and don't have the ability to purchase the license? Are we compensating them in some way to say, okay, if you qualify, you don't pay for your license? Is there a provision in there that says that's gonna happen? Well, I want a better business, right? And I ain't got no money. I got just enough money to start my business, but I ain't got no money to go through the fees to get all these licenses that I need, right? And let's say, could I come to the city and say, I want the same as this person, but I don't have the money. Can you help me? We'll be able to help them?
The only thing you will have is the ability to have a transfer or issuance of that license to you without having paid a current existing business. The annual fee will still be charged by the city, the renewal fee.
So in other words, I see what he's, but, okay, I get your point.
But that's, I mean, the cost of buying a liquor license is a significant barrier to a lot of people. We're talking about a couple $100,000. So,
So are
you
we
know,
gonna help them? If they can't afford them, do we have some kind of?
you're helping them by not making them having to pay another business or wait, because there may be a sitting and wait period for another business to go out of business and sit around and buy it from them.
So you will still have to purchase it from the other person?
If you want to go after that one,
Besides, we only allowing 5 more. We're not allowing more than 5. So if these 5s get purchased and somebody wants to start, they would have to purchase from the other person.
if we
That's what you would have to do,
don't
right?
save them right now, if we don't send a home rule petition to have these 5 revert to the city every time an establishment
So what you're
closes.
trying to do here is a simple one. You're trying to, when these people lose their businesses, right, they can't sell it. They would have
Correct.
to give it to the city, and the people will buy from the city. That's the bottom line, right?
Correct, but you're not really buying it from the city, you're just getting it issued to you. We're not losing revenue.
Sorry, I mean.
That's okay.
with-
I got
with-
my
with-
answer.
With, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Demar.
go ahead,
So,
go
no,
ahead.
no, no, no.
I don't want you
I
to
don't
miss
wanna
your
go out,
moment.
I don't wanna go out of turn.
I'm going to change the subject, so go ahead.
Okay. So I understand that we want to give people an opportunity, but in business, especially in the hospitality business, okay? This is one of the roughest industries for people to make it anywhere, okay? So this is kind of like the city getting into making bad loans to people that really shouldn't qualify and setting up another financial crisis. Not that it's going to be to that thing, but it's the same principle, that you're kind of trying to get people to be more involved in business and allowing people that don't have as much capitalization to get into that business. But that's also setting up people to fail. And so if you're undercapitalized, like, you know, at least, you know, 70% of all businesses, you're going to have a problem. And I think that it behooves the city, if the city should be interested in our revenue, right? You say we don't lose any revenue. Yes, we do, because those tax dollars that we're getting from meal taxes and everything else are not going to be there because those businesses are going to be failing. So if you have a successful business that's really ka-ching, 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 you're going to be paying a lot more in revenue to the city than someone that really isn't making it. So that's my only point. So I I appreciate us, trying to help people, but I think if you want to help people in this, to succeed in this kind of business, a different type of help might be better, and something where they might be able to get a hold of sufficient capital to do something. Now, I also appreciate Councilor Robinson's point about the city should be getting something out of this. I totally agree. And if there were some way to kind of recapture all the licenses and then have everybody, whether we wanted to, basically buy back the licenses when somebody goes out of business and then take control, that might be something else. That way they'll get back what they put in, and then the city could do it, and everybody would be equal. But I'm afraid that, we get locked into this thing about not treating everybody equal, and we're never going to treat everybody equal until we start treating people equal. So that's kind of, I get the good intentions, but I you know what they say. I mean, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I'm just not sure that this is really the best idea.
I don't want to rebut every single time, but I'll save my comments for later. First, Councilor Vido, and then Councilor Robinson.
I'm listening to the argument, and I understand what's being said. But if I own a business with a liquor license that I bought for $650,000, and then I go to sell my business, I can sell it for significantly more than the person who does not have the liquor license, that doesn't own it, right? So that's where you would make your money. It's like renting or owning, right? Like it's like leasing a liquor license. Okay, so I would like to hear what the city manager's opinion is on it, but I'd like to, actually, I have a couple of other questions. I thought that, and mind you, these past 2 years with the pandemic, my mind is gone. Maybe it's old age, but nonetheless. Wasn't there something similar like this before, a home rule petition? Didn't we have liquor licenses that came back to the city, or did we just never go through with it?
The only thing that was anything similar touching upon liquor licenses was you introduced a home rule petition to expand the number of licenses, but at the time, there was a sentiment from others, including myself, that why don't we wait until the census comes out and we may already have an increase.
Yes,
And then,
okay.
here
Yes.
we are,
Okay,
years
All right.
later, say,
We
the
got 'em.
census came, we got the increase
Got it.
without having that home rule petition asking the state to approve an increase.
Okay.
And that's where we are.
okay. Thank you for reminding me. And wait, last thing. If we, with this increase of liquor licenses, the marijuana licenses that we give are based on a percentage of the liquor licenses that we have. How would that affect the amount of marijuana licenses that we give out?
I think, well, no matter what, the 5 are assigned. I just want to make everyone understand. These 5 liquor licenses that we got are there and are in queue to be dispersed. They're there. It's just a question of what we're going to do with them. Do we reserve them and stipulate that they come back to the city each time? Or they let the market determine, as we always had, first come, first serve, you apply for a liquor license, have a nice day. And so that's what is happening. To the question of whether that impacts our number of licenses for marijuana, I can't remember the ratio, but I think it was, because we have 5, that might equal 1 more. I don't know if we go beyond 6, because I think we already extended it to 6, and we haven't reached the number of liquor licenses that makes us go over 6. So, because we went from 4 to 6,
Okay.
we still are above, even with these 5, we're above what we normally would have had.
And the order that we had put in initially for the social equity aspect, will that still apply to all 6 marijuana licenses?
I don't think anything got passed regarding social equity on the marijuana license, but I believe that the licensing board and under the direction of our city solicitor have taken into account those guidelines already.
That we did
But
pass
I
it.
don't think we passed anything during that time. There was a question of whether or not, I remember I introduced something that would have reserved the licenses, at least one for always a Chelsea resident, and we talked about equity, but nothing passed. And so it was just up to the licensing board to take into account social equity and make a decision at that
Okay.
point, but nothing's in the books according
All right,
to.
I just want to make a note that I am in full support of this. I think it's a great idea. I think the idea of it coming back to the city and not charging people, not having to pay the upfront cost really does make it accessible for regular folks to open up a business that otherwise wouldn't be able to, especially Chelsea residents, people that want to invest in their community. How many people like Yahaya or that live in the city can't even afford it and they have to go elsewhere? So it would be really nice to kind of like Councilor Cooper said, to level the playing field, and I don't have any.
Councilor Robinson.
At it this way. 5 licenses are given out by the city that are gonna revert back to the city. It does not eliminate, if I already have an existing liquor license, and I have a business, there's no city licenses available, and somebody wants to buy my license, then I can sell it for whatever I wanna sell it for. And if they wanna give me whatever amount of money they wanna give me, they'll give me it in order to get the license. But they won't be able to do that with these 5 licenses here. So it doesn't eliminate those who already have a license. And if somebody wants to pay them to buy that license, they can do that.
And I know that there's talk about, okay, it's gonna be a lot less expensive, you know, if we give this away versus having them purchase it from someone else. Don't forget, when you're buying a restaurant, you know, again, it's a heavy cost in the beginning between all the equipment. There's a lease agreement, and so you're talking about an investment already for some of nearly anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. It just eliminates, at least in this one of these 5, the additional $150,000, $250,000. So is there still a huge cost up front to opening up a restaurant, and a significant cost? Absolutely. But it would definitely maybe attract, and at the same time, unlike the other sort of transfers that happen, licenses that exist, the licensing board gets to have some say into maybe it's fulfilling a niche or a need that currently doesn't exist. And so that they're not all the same sort of, you know, genre of food or experience. And that's one thing that's key to this part. It allows the licensing board to say, all right, maybe there's a sort of type of food and a concept that right now we don't have. And that's what's needed, and you get it. If you come in and let's just say you want to open up another brick oven pizza place, they may say, well, not for nothing, that's not actually a real need in the community. We have one already. If you want to do it, knock yourself out, but you're going to go and buy one of the other licenses and then have competition. This kind of reserves it to something that is unique and not already here in the city. Councilor Taylor.
Sorry, I have a kind of an informational question here. The members of the licensing board, how many of those people actually own their own businesses?
Own their own businesses?
Own their own businesses. Do we know? Do any of them?
I will tell you right now that 2 of the individuals are in the hospitality.
No, I understand
So,
that, but that's
but
different
own
than being
a
an
business, I don't think right now any of the individuals own a business.
owner. Okay, so that's another kind of that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure, and not that any of those people are not, you know, smart people or do a good job on the licensing board. I'm not saying that at all. I know a lot of them, and some of them very well. But my point is that when you start making or investing that type of power about who comes in and who doesn't, and you want to have people that have some sort of that knows what it is. Like a lot of people, like this sentiment about, you know, that this is a great idea, you know, like I'm in touch with that. I know that this is a very well-intentioned thing. I just, you know, I know how hard it is from personal experience. I know how hard it is to make stuff work. And I get the point that you know, you're still gonna have to have enough money, but I guarantee you that we're gonna see if you know, if you lower the bar for something, and you're gonna get people trying to stretch. And so I just wanna make sure that the licensing board will be pretty strict about, you know, giving these licenses to people that can actually be a success at what they're doing. Because it really is the city's money, after all. And that's kind of what I'm worried about, is the impact. And I'm not sure how much it's gonna be. I mean, maybe it's worth a try, you know? So, you know, I'm just skeptical about, I think there are better ways to go about trying. I agree with the concept of trying to get more people to actually be involved in business. I like that idea. I'm all for it. I've long advocated that kind of thing. I'm just not sure this is exactly the way to do it. So that's all I'm gonna say.
No. They're already paying the renewal lease. I'm going to go to Councilor Melinda Vega Maldonado, but I just wanted to say I concur with you about trying to get people with that sort of business background on the licensing board. We recently had opening, and it was difficult. I suggested some people, and it's hard to get people who have that background, and maybe it's because they're so busy working that they don't have time to come on to, you know, and serve at the board. But I recommend any one of my colleagues that if they can think of good candidates at all times, you know, send them to the city manager, and he welcomes them. So, Councilor Vega Maldonado, and then I'll let the city manager answer, you know, his statement about this, and before we wrap up.
I also want to know what is Tom's opinion on this as well. But oh, my apologies. I am for this. I do think that this can be extremely beneficial for to level out the playing field and for it to be more equitable for people of color that live here in Chelsea to have an opportunity, a better opportunity to open a business. And I do think that having the opportunity to have a liquor license will also bring more revenue. Like, I don't understand what is the hesitation. Why would it do the opposite? I don't get that. I think, I mean, as someone that likes to go to restaurants, I would much rather go to a restaurant that has a liquor license, so, you know, than not. So, what is?
I don't understand. What's the question
Like,
through the chair? What are you asking?
Maybe this, what is the hesitation of, or what is, like, the thought of them not having enough capital from the beginning, like we're doing them a favor essentially or something, for them to be able to afford it, and then if they do qualify and we do have this program, aren't we gonna have prerequisites that we can take a look to see if the if there's financial stability
Again, that's part of the
already?
vetting process that the
Right?
licensing board will do. I imagine they'll vet restaurants in that manner, which is what they currently do. It's just an extension, and they'll have more discretion on these licenses. So, City Manager Tom Ambrosino, yep,
Before he does, Mr. Recupero, and I have a question.
okay.
If I own a business and I have my own liquor license and I paid $1 million for this license and I have a thriving business, and Todd Taylor says he comes before the city because he wants to buy this business, my business, but he doesn't have the capital for a license, so he wants to get one of those free licenses. Can I sell him my business and sell my license to someone else?
Yes, you can.
That license to someone else, I thought you said you
No.
transfer it over.
Only the five that we're getting. Those can't be
So
transferred
the
over.
original ones, you can
Yes.
always do that.
Okay.
So what you're doing is keeping the new ones. So
Yep.
that's, what you want to do is fine that way. So in other words, you're not penalizing the people that have it.
Correct.
You're giving an opportunity to the ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
So
thank you.
that's fine, that's good.
As a
Thank you.
matter of fact, for another example, we have, in some examples, we've had pocket licenses. And what I mean by that is, there have been situations where a restaurant is closed, or even a liquor store is closed. The building that they were in was rented, and they couldn't make it anymore, and so they sold the business without a liquor license, some examples, and they keep it. The licensing board allows that person
To keep that
to
license?
keep that license. In some cases, usually a year, in some cases I saw they let that person have it for 2 years. It's a pocket license because it's not actually being used at the time.
But it
And then
belongs to that
and then they can
establishment?
either sell it or reopen it.
Okay.
So it's a piece of paper, it's a deed that says this is, you literally, when you walk into a restaurant, you see the license. It goes with you as a deed.
Got it.
And so I can sell my business and I don't have to sell my liquor license. It's a real asset.
Got it. Thank you.
City Manager Tom Ambrosino, I know that this is something that Cheryl's worked on, and she's not here to answer some of these very same questions, but whatever insight or whatever opinion you may have on this, feel free to provide to my colleagues.
So thank you, Mr. President. So I want to set aside the RFP process and just talk about the home rule petition. I support it, but I support it because it really has one major benefit, and that's the one the City Council President just mentioned. It prevents, for these 5 licenses, the pocketing of the license. As soon as the business closed, that license comes back to the city immediately. It's the city's license. It is not, this particular home rule petition, as written, doesn't really lower barriers at all, because it's not asking to increase the number of liquor licenses that are available to the city. Right now, the barriers are lowered because we got 5 new licenses. Regardless of this home rule petition, we now have 5 brand-new licenses to give out at a marginal cost to people, only the cost of the annual fee, which is $4,500, as opposed to the $200,000 you'd have to pay on the market for this license if we were out of licenses. So the market always crashes whenever the city gets new licenses. So right now, someone wanted to come into this business, the barriers are lowered only because the city has 5 new licenses. It has nothing to do with the home rule petition. So the market, that the value of people that currently have licenses right now is gone. It'll restore itself entirely as soon as the 5 licenses are issued, because then once again, the city will have no licenses to give, the market will be reestablished, and those people who have transferable licenses, which these won't be, will have the right to sell. Now, someone could wait and say, I'm going to wait for one of those pockets, one of those non-transferable licenses to come back to the city. You could be waiting years and years and years for that. So the market for those, I don't think it's going to have the unintended consequence that you fear. That, because that sort of market goes up and down anytime the city gets a new license or somehow gets a license returned to it, which occasionally happens even under the current system. All this specific home rule petition really does, its major benefit is for these 5 licenses, they're never going to be able to be put in a person's pocket. If their business closes, it comes back to the city automatically.
There's no other kind of stipulation on who is eligible for these licenses. Anybody could be eligible, correct?
In the home rule petition, you have, it is proposed to constrain it to 3 categories.
And does the city
Hotel,
intend-
restaurants, and function homes.
I understand that. But does the city intend on placing any other restrictions on these licenses?
Not as, no, the licensing commission has decided, now I'm getting to the RFP process, the licensing commission has decided, instead of doing what they normally do with new licenses, which is first come, first serve, whoever shows up at the door first, we're ready to entertain your a request for a license, and if, you know, as long as you meet the basic requirements, we're gonna give you the license. Now the license commission said, we just got 5 new licenses. Instead of a rush to the door as to who shows up first, we're gonna ask people to respond to an RFP because we wanna evaluate these licenses. So if there's 7 people interested, we don't want to just give it to the first 5 who showed up. We want to evaluate all 7 and give it to the people among those 7 that we think best meet our qualifications. So if you're talking about restrictions, no, but they are going to look at the factors they've identified.
These 11 criteria.
Correct. That's how they're going to evaluate contenders for these 5 brand-new licenses.
All right, thank you.
I have a question for the city manager. While I agree with what the licensing board is proposing, it feels a little odd to me that we put people on boards and then they make up their own rules as to how they want for these licenses to go through. Isn't it something that should be up to the city council to approve?
No, the licensing commission has the discretion to issue licenses.
Then we have to pay closer attention to who we're putting on these boards, period, across the board.
That's a fair point.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, and at the same time, I would say that licensing board, like all boards, again, any counselor can attend these meetings and talk to the members of them during a meeting. I don't suggest you call them at home or anything like that, but, and talk to the colleagues. And also, you know, I'm sure all of us have expressed our opinions on matters either to the city manager or whoever the staff assigned person is. In this case, usually Cheryl Watson, about, you know, what direction we'd like to see as an advocate. And so, yes, it doesn't end right there. It's not a vacuum, so to speak, but I suggest that. But Council, yes, Lisa,
Yeah.
you need to be heard, and you are the last speaker. We're cutting it into next meeting time.
Did you have a secret microphone over there, Councilor Brown?
President. I just want to follow up on the question regarding, I know the License Commission has procedure and they issue license, but when they have parameters or, you know, different criteria, I think it is a great idea or a good idea to also shoot it before the City Council so we can be informed. If it wasn't for this meeting here tonight, some of us would not know that beyond what the City Council has understanding of regarding issuing license, now since we talking new licenses, there's another criteria that should at least out of respect been brought before the City Council to give us an opportunity to view it, look at it, and have a say-so. Going to a meeting is one thing. We've all, as Council President stated, we've all showed up at meetings. But again, if this is something that they already have voted on without the knowledge of the City Council, I think it takes it away a little bit from the council and being active in what's going on down there.
That being said, thank you, everyone. We will now close this session, and we'll quickly start the regularly scheduled 7 p.m. meeting.